A fertility clinic implanted the wrong woman with the genetic material of the nation's most powerful man. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The morning began quietly in the city, with a soft gray light slipping through the blinds of Lena Hart's small apartment. She sat at the edge of her bed, holding her warm mug with both hands, trying to steady her breathing. Today was supposed to be a hopeful day, the kind of day she had prayed for during every long night of treatment, every appointment, every disappointing test result. She had finally completed her last in vitro fertilization cycle. Her savings were gone, her emergency fund was empty, and she had sold nearly everything she could. But she told herself it was worth it. She believed this would be her final chance to become a mother, a dream she had carried since she was young. Lena pulled on her coat and stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The city sidewalks were still wet from last night's rain. Cars passed with a soft hiss, and somewhere a bakery opened its doors, releasing the warm smell of fresh bread into the cold. She tried to let the scent comfort her, but her nerves felt tight, like a knot that refused to loosen. At the fertility clinic, the lights were bright and sterile. The staff smiled, but the smiles felt thin, as if they were stretched too tightly across faces that avoided her eyes. She did not think much of it at first. She had been here many times. She knew that medical workers often carried stress that had nothing to do with her. Still, something felt different today. "Good morning, Miss Hart," a nurse said, guiding her to the waiting area. Her tone was polite, but Lena noticed the tremor in her hands as she held the clipboard. Lena sat down, folding her fingers together to keep them from shaking. On the television mounted in the corner, a morning news segment played silently. The caption displayed the name Alexander Vale. She recognized it immediately. Everyone did. He was one of the most influential men in the country, a billionaire, a strategist, a figure that shaped national direction without ever needing to raise his voice. Lena looked away. People like him lived in a world she would never touch. She reminded herself why she was here. She placed a protective hand over her abdomen, even though she knew it was far too early to feel anything at all. But the gesture grounded her. A door opened. "Miss Hart, the doctor will see you now." Lena stood, unaware that her life was already shifting beneath her feet. She walked toward the hallway, unaware of the mistake that had already happened, unaware of the genetic code that did not belong to the donor she had chosen, unaware that the man from the television screen would soon become tied to her life in a way neither of them could ever undo. And as she stepped into the doctor's office, everything she thought she understood about her future was about to change. The door closed softly behind Lena as she stepped into Dr. Hale's office. The room felt unusually still, as if the air itself was waiting. A clock ticked on the wall, slow and heavy, each second stretching longer than it should. Dr. Hale did not sit down. He stood near his desk with his hands clasped, his expression tight and uneasy. Lena felt her pulse quicken. "Doctor," she said gently, "you asked me to come in. Is everything all right with the pregnancy?" The question barely left her lips before she saw something shift in his eyes. Not fear, not anger, something closer to regret. "Lena," he began, choosing each word carefully, "your latest genetic screening results came in this morning. The embryo is viable, healthy, but there is a discrepancy that we cannot ignore." The room grew colder. "A discrepancy?" Lena repeated. "What does that mean?" Dr. Hale exhaled slowly. He picked up a folder with her name on it, but the label beneath hers was not familiar. It was marked with a red stripe and a stamped seal. It looked nothing like the standard clinic chart she was used to seeing. "There was a mislabeling," he said, "a serious one. The donor material you selected was not the material used during your procedure." Lena felt the floor tilt beneath her. She gripped the arm of the chair to steady herself. "That is impossible," she whispered. "I checked everything. I confirmed every detail. I followed every step you told me to follow." "I know you did," he said calmly. "This mistake was not yours." For a moment, Lena could not breathe. She had spent every dollar she had. She had pinned all of her remaining hope on this one chance. And now she was being told that her carefully chosen donor was not the father of her child. Her voice trembled. Then whose material was used? Dr. Hale hesitated. That hesitation frightened her more than the words that followed. The genetic match belongs to Alexander Vale. Silence filled the room, thick and unbelievable. Lena blinked, certain she had misheard. Alexander Vale, she repeated softly, as if the name might sound different the second time. The Alexander Vale? Dr. Hale nodded once. The billionaire, the political strategist, the man whose decisions were discussed on every major news network, a man whose world existed far above hers, in towers of glass and steel, not in small apartments where rent was paid week by week. This cannot be real, she said, shaking her head. How could something like this even happen? We are conducting a full internal review, Dr. Hale explained. But I must be honest with you. His samples were stored in a restricted vault. They were not supposed to be anywhere near your procedure. It appears a technician mishandled several containers during a late-night cycle. A mistake. A devastating mistake. Lena pressed her hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. Her thoughts raced in circles. She had come here prepared for normal worries, normal fears, normal questions. She never imagined anything like this. What happens now? She asked, her voice small. We are legally required to inform him, Dr. Hale said. He will learn of the pregnancy soon. Lena felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Alexander Vale was a man known for power, influence, and precision. A man who controlled empires. And she, an ordinary preschool teacher barely holding her life together, was carrying his biological child. The weight of that reality pressed against her ribs until she could barely speak. She stood slowly, her legs unsteady. This was supposed to be my miracle, she whispered. And now, I do not even know what my life is anymore. Dr. Hale tried to offer reassuring words, but she barely heard them. The moment she stepped back into the hallway, her world felt louder, harsher, too bright to bear. She left the clinic in a daze, the cold air hitting her face like a wave. Cars honked in the distance. People walked by without noticing her. Everything looked the same, yet nothing in her life was the same anymore. The child inside her carried the blood of a man who shaped the nation, and that man was about to learn her name. On the 38th floor of a glass tower overlooking the city, Alexander Vale was reviewing policy drafts when his chief legal advisor entered the office without waiting for permission. That alone was enough to tell him something was wrong. His staff never broke protocol unless there was an emergency. Sir, the advisor said, holding a sealed folder with both hands, we have a situation regarding one of your private genetic samples. Alexander set his pen down. He did not raise his voice, but the air in the room seemed to tense around him. Explain. The advisor opened the folder and placed a single sheet on the desk. There has been an insemination error at a fertility clinic. Your genetic material was used in a procedure without authorization. A woman named Lena Hart is now confirmed to be pregnant. For a full moment, Alexander did not speak. His gaze moved slowly over the document, reading each line with careful precision. He was a man who lived by order, structure, and absolute control. Yet this page represented something that had slipped far beyond his reach. Is the information verified? He asked. Yes, sir. The clinic contacted us early this morning. They are in the process of internal review. The error was caused by mislabeling during a late-night cycle. Alexander closed the folder, but the weight of it remained in his hand. Tell me about her. The advisor pulled up a second report. She is a preschool teacher. She lives in a modest apartment on the east side. No criminal record. No history of litigation. She came for in vitro fertilization alone. Financially, she is struggling. Her file states this was her final attempt. Something in Alexander's expression softened, although only slightly. She chose this procedure as her last hope. Yes, sir. Alexander turned toward the window. The city stretched out in wide blocks of steel and movement, but for once, he did not see it. He saw only a woman who had walked into a clinic believing she was creating a small miracle for herself, never imagining she would carry the child of a man she had never met. She must be informed that I will speak with her, he said quietly. The advisor hesitated. Sir, she may not respond well. This is overwhelming for her. I understand that, Alexander replied, but I will not allow her to face this alone. Arrange a meeting. Be respectful. No pressure, no intimidation. The advisor nodded and left. Alexander remained at the window, one hand resting against the cool glass. He had grown used to being untouchable, a figure people whispered about rather than approached. Yet the thought of Lena Hart felt strangely close, as if the mistake had created a thread binding their lives together in a way neither of them chose. He wondered whether she was frightened. He wondered whether she felt betrayed. He wondered how long she had carried this truth alone. Later that afternoon, his security team received a message from the clinic. Lena had left in distress. She had walked out into the cold morning air with no direction, no plan, and no idea how her world had changed. Alexander felt an unfamiliar pull in his chest. Concern. Find her, he instructed calmly. But be gentle. She is not a suspect. She is not a threat. She is a woman whose life has been altered by someone else's mistake. As his team moved into action, Alexander opened the folder again. The name Lena Hart seemed to echo louder than any headline or financial report he had ever read. Somewhere across the city, the woman carrying his child was trying to understand the impossible, and he would meet her soon. Lena sat in the back of the black sedan with her fingers curled tightly around the small heart-shaped necklace resting against her collarbone. She could feel every beat of her heart pulsing through the metal. The car moved smoothly through the late afternoon traffic, but nothing felt steady inside her. The city outside her window blurred into streaks of gray and gold. She kept imagining what waited for her at the end of this drive, a conversation she had never asked for, a man she had only seen on television screens, a future she could not yet understand. When the sedan pulled up to a quiet, private building, the driver stepped out and opened her door with gentle care, not the formality she expected from someone working for a billionaire. It made her feel both more at ease and more aware of how fragile this moment was. "Miss Hart," the driver said softly, "he is expecting you." Her legs felt unsteady as she walked inside. The hallway was calm, decorated in warm tones and soft lighting, nothing like the cold corporate building she had imagined. Still, she could feel her anxiety tightening in her chest with every step. At the end of the hall, a tall man stood with his back to her. His posture was straight, composed, and unmistakably controlled. She recognized him instantly, even before he turned. The shape of his shoulders, the stillness he carried, the quiet weight of someone accustomed to influence. "Mr. Vale?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He turned toward her slowly. Alexander Vale met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw more than the persona shown on television. His expression was not cold. It was focused, steady, and strangely gentle for a man who held so much power. "Thank you for meeting with me," he said. His voice was calm, deep, and controlled, but not unkind. Lena swallowed, her throat tight. "I did not know what else to do," she admitted. "This situation, it is overwhelming." "I understand," he replied. "This should never have happened. You were not at fault, and you should not carry the weight of the clinic's mistake." His words surprised her. She had expected accusations, demands, or legal threats, but instead he spoke as if he was trying to give her room to breathe. She lowered her gaze. "I came here for a chance to be a mother. I never imagined it would lead to this." Alexander stepped closer, but only a single pace, enough to show respect without invading her space. "I know this is frightening. It is not simple for me either, but we will address this together. You are not alone in this, Lena." The way he said her name made her chest tighten. It was steady, deliberate, and carried a sincerity she was not prepared for. She looked up, meeting his eyes again. "What happens now?" "For now," he said, "we focus on your health and the health of the child. Everything else can be managed with time." There was something in his tone that calmed her, even though she still felt trapped in a life she had not chosen. She could feel the weight of his presence, not heavy with authority, but anchored with intention. He was not trying to control her, he was trying to understand her. For the first time since the doctor had spoken the truth, Lena felt the faintest sense of stability return to her. Just a faint one, but enough to take one steady breath. For the next several days, Lena felt as if she was moving through a world made of glass. Every sound echoed, every interaction felt sharper than it should, and every breath carried the weight of her new reality. She kept replaying Alexander's words in her mind. "You are not alone in this, Lena. It had been the last thing she expected from a man like him. Yet those words followed her like a quiet thread of stability, pulling her through the fear that tried to settle in her chest. Alexander kept his distance physically, but not emotionally. He checked in every morning through his advisor, asking if she had eaten, if she had slept, if she felt safe. It was not controlling, it was careful, deliberate concern. And she did not know how to respond to the warmth that seemed to grow where fear had been just days before. On the fourth morning, Lena arrived at the hospital for her scheduled early prenatal evaluation. She expected to go through the appointment alone, as she always had, but when she stepped into the waiting area, she froze. Alexander Vale was sitting quietly in one of the chairs. He stood the moment he saw her. "Good morning, Lena." Her breath stalled in her throat. "You came here?" "Yes," he said, as if the answer was obvious. "I told you that we would handle this together." He offered no grand gesture, no dramatic explanation. He simply stood beside her, tall and steady, creating a calm presence in a moment that should have felt overwhelming. The nurse called her name, and Lena hesitated. Hospitals had always held a mixture of hope and grief for her. She had walked through too many hallways carrying dreams that never became real. Alexander noticed the tension in her shoulders. "If you want me to wait outside, I will," he said softly. "But if you want me to stay, I will do that as well." Lena surprised herself with her answer. "Stay." Inside the examination room, the lights were bright and cool. The equipment hummed in a gentle rhythm, a familiar sound she had learned to associate with both comfort and disappointment. She lay back on the bed, her hands folded tightly across her abdomen. Alexander stayed near the corner of the room, careful not to intrude, but close enough to offer unspoken support. He watched with steady attention as the doctor prepared the ultrasound machine. The screen flickered to life. A soft pulse appeared. Lena's breath caught. She had seen ultrasound images before, but this one hit her differently. This one was real. This one was hers. This one was alive. The doctor smiled. "Everything looks healthy. The heartbeat is strong." A tear slipped down Lena's cheek. She tried to wipe it away quickly, embarrassed. But Alexander stepped forward just slightly, his voice gentle. "It is all right," he said. "This is a lot to take in." She looked at him, her emotions tangled in fear, relief, and something she could not yet name. She had expected him to feel distant from this experience. Instead, he looked at the screen with quiet awe, as if he was seeing something he did not expect to move him. For the first time since the truth had shattered her world, Lena felt the beginning of something new. Not safety, not certainty, but a shift in the air, something soft, something healing, something that hinted they were no longer standing on opposite sides of an impossible mistake. For the rest of the afternoon, Lena moved through her day with a quiet heaviness inside her. Not the painful kind she was used to carrying, but something more complicated, something that made her pause more often, breathe a little slower, and replay the steady look in Alexander's eyes as he watched the faint heartbeat flicker across the ultrasound screen. That moment had settled inside her like a warm ember, and she was almost afraid to touch it. Later that evening, as the sun lowered over the city and painted the clouds in soft shades of amber, Lena found herself walking home instead of taking the bus. She needed the fresh air. She needed a way to make sense of the sudden gentleness that had entered her life. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. "Please let me know when you arrive home safely. Alexander." She stopped walking, staring at the words. They were simple, polite, not demanding, not intrusive, but they carried a quiet sincerity that made her chest tighten. She typed back carefully, "I am almost home." "Good," he replied. "If you ever need anything, you can contact me directly. I do not want you to feel unprotected during this time." That word lingered with her. Protected. She had lived so long without expecting protection from anyone that she almost did not know how to receive it. Still, she did not shut the feeling out. Not this time. When she reached her apartment, she sent another message. "I am home now, thank you." There was a short pause. Then, "Rest well, Lena." She put her phone down and sat on the edge of her bed, letting the quiet settle around her. It felt strange to realize she did not dread the next doctor visit, or the next conversation. Alexander's presence, even from a distance, had shifted something inside her. The next morning, she arrived at the prenatal clinic for routine blood work. She did not expect to see him again so soon, But when she stepped around the corner, there he was, standing in the hallway with a small folder in his hands. He turned immediately when he sensed her presence. "Good morning. What are you doing here?" she asked softly, surprised but not unsettled. "I wanted to review the medical updates with you," he said, "and I wanted to make sure you are not handling everything alone." Lena hesitated. "You do not need to do that. This is overwhelming enough for you as it is." Alexander shook his head gently. "It is not overwhelming," he said. "It is important." There was something vulnerable in the way he said it, as if he was admitting more than the words held. She realized then that this situation had pierced through the armor he wore every day. It had forced him into a space where he had no scripts, no strategies, no control, just humanity. They walked together into the consultation room. As the nurse checked her vitals, Lena noticed how Alexander watched quietly from the side, not interfering, not dominating the space, but grounding it. His presence created a calmness she did not know she needed until she felt it. When the nurse stepped out, Lena whispered, "Why are you being so kind to me?" Alexander met her gaze with steady honesty. "Because none of this was your choice," he said, "and because I want to do better than the world expects of me." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room felt warmer, safer, as if something invisible had shifted once again. This was no longer a mistake they were managing. It was the beginning of a fragile connection neither of them had planned, but neither of them was willing to ignore. For a while, everything seemed strangely steady. Lena attended her appointments. Alexander remained close enough to help, but distant enough to respect her boundaries. It felt like a fragile truce between two people who were still learning how to exist in the same unexpected story. But steadiness never lasts forever. One afternoon, Lena arrived at the clinic and immediately sensed that something was off. The receptionist spoke in a hushed voice. A nurse hurried down the hallway without acknowledging her. Phones rang more often than usual. The entire building felt tense. Then she saw it. A news van parked across the street. Her stomach dropped. She felt the panic before she could stop it. Her hands trembled as she stepped backward, pressing herself against the wall. She had tried so hard to keep her life quiet. She had done everything possible to protect her privacy and her child. But the presence of that van meant the truth was slipping beyond her control. She whispered to herself, "No, not today. Please, not today." Before she could move, a familiar voice called her name. "Lena." Alexander walked toward her, his expression sharp with concern. "Are you all right?" She shook her head. "They are outside. They know something. How did this happen?" Alexander looked toward the entrance, his jaw tightening. "It was not supposed to leak. My legal team has been handling this quietly." "Handling it?" Lena repeated, her voice rising without her permission. "Then why are there cameras outside the clinic? Why are reporters here before I even understand my own life?" Alexander stepped closer, but she pulled back. "Lena," he said gently, "I will fix this." "You cannot promise that," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You cannot fix everything. You cannot control everything." He looked at her with a mixture of understanding and frustration. "I am trying to protect you." She laughed softly, but it was not a joyful sound. "Protect me? My job is already calling me less. Parents at the preschool are whispering. My mother is terrified. My life is turning upside down because of a mistake I never made. And now the entire country may know before I am even ready to breathe again." Alexander blinked, as if her words had struck something deep. He stepped forward again, softer this time. "You are right. I cannot control every outcome, but I can stand beside you while we face them." Lena shook her head. "Standing beside me is not the same as understanding me. You do not know what it is like to lose privacy. You do not know what it is like to have people judging you before they even know your name." Her voice trembled. A tear slipped down her cheek. For the first time since they met, Alexander looked genuinely unsteady, as if the ground beneath him had shifted. He had power over many things, but not over her pain. He reached out, stopping just before his hand touched her arm. "Lena," he said softly, "tell me what you need." She stepped back before he could touch her. "I need space. I need time. I need to figure out what my life is without the entire world watching." The silence between them stretched. Alexander lowered his hand. "If that is what you need, I will respect it." Lena nodded, her breath trembling. She turned away, walking down the hallway with slow, unsteady steps. Alexander remained where he stood, watching her go, feeling something unfamiliar settle heavy in his chest. The first real crack had formed, not in their situation, but in the quiet connection they had just begun to build. Lena tried to disappear into the quiet corners of her life, but the world did not allow her the peace she needed. The day after she asked Alexander for space, the first headline appeared online. It did not use her name, but it came painfully close. Anonymous woman reported pregnant after genetic mix-up involving influential figure. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Unknown numbers, suspicious messages. Even her neighbors seemed to watch her differently. She kept her curtains closed and her door locked, hoping the chaos would pass if she stayed silent enough. But storms do not fade when silence is the only shield. That evening, as she tried to rest, a loud knock echoed through her apartment hallway, followed by another. She froze, her breath caught in her chest. "Miss Hart," a voice called. "We only want to comment." Lena backed away from the door, trembling. They knew her name now. She covered her mouth to keep from crying out. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear anything else. Another knock followed, louder this time. "Miss Hart, the public deserves to hear your side." Her phone vibrated again. A message appeared from one of the parents at the preschool. "Is it true? Are those stories about you?" Her throat closed. A wave of fear rushed through her so quickly she felt dizzy. She whispered to herself, "I cannot do this. I cannot handle this." With shaking hands, she called the only person who might understand the magnitude of what was happening. She did not know if he would answer. She did not even know if she wanted him to. But fear overcame pride. The phone barely rang once. "Lena?" Alexander's voice came through immediately, steady and controlled. "What is happening?" "They are outside," she whispered. "Reporters. They know my name. I did not tell anyone. I do not know how they found me." "Lena, listen to me," he said firmly. "Do not open the door. Step away from it. I am sending security to you right now." "I did not want this," she cried softly. "I only wanted a chance to have a child. And now everything is falling apart." There was a brief silence on the line, but it was not an empty one. It felt weighted, as if Alexander was holding her fear inside his own chest. "This is not your fault," he said. "You should not face this alone. I am on my way." "No," she said quickly. "You cannot come here. It will make everything worse." "I disagree," he replied. "You are in danger. That matters more than public perception." Before she could respond, a heavy thud hit her hallway. Something toppled over. Lena gasped and stepped back, gripping the phone tighter. "Alexander," she whispered. "Please hurry." "I am already in the car," he said. "Stay where you are. My team will arrive before I do." Minutes later, she heard footsteps outside her door again. But this time, they were followed by calm, authoritative voices. The tension shifted. The noise disappeared. Her entire hallway fell silent. Then her phone vibrated once more. "My team has secured the building," Alexander said. "No one will get near you again." Lena pressed her hand to her chest. Relief mixed with exhaustion washed over her. For the first time since the news broke, the fear loosened its grip. She whispered, "Thank you." Alexander's reply came softly, but with an undeniable promise. "You are not alone, Lena. Not now. Not ever. As long as you allow me to help." Outside, the world was still spinning out of control. But inside her quiet apartment, something steady finally returned. A breath, a fragile sense of safety, a feeling she had not let herself trust until this moment. When Alexander arrived at Lena's apartment building, the hallway was already secured by his team. Reporters had been pushed far back to the street, and the silence inside the building felt deep and almost fragile, like a space recovering from an unexpected storm. Lena opened the door slowly when he knocked. Her eyes were tired, red around the edges, but her posture was steady. She did not collapse into him. She did not fall apart. She simply stepped aside, allowing him to enter, an unspoken sign that the distance she had asked for had shifted. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "I would have come sooner," Alexander replied, "if you had let me." There was no accusation in his voice, only a quiet truth that made her chest tighten. They sat at her small dining table, the wood slightly worn from years of use. It felt strange to see a man like him in her modest home, yet he looked perfectly at ease, as if the space did not need to change to accommodate him. Lena took a slow breath. I cannot live like this, Alexander. Not with reporters outside my door. Not with people whispering. I am carrying a child, and I need safety more than anything right now. You will have it, he said. I promise you that. How? She whispered. How can you control something this big? Alexander leaned forward, his expression steady. I cannot control the media, but I can take responsibility openly. If the world understands that you are not a scandal, not a rumor, but someone under my personal protection, the pressure will shift. People will step back. Lena held his gaze for a long moment. You want to speak publicly. I want to protect you, he corrected gently, and our child. The word our echoed through her chest. She had never allowed herself to think of it that way, not until now. Before she could respond, Alexander continued. You do not have to decide anything today. I only want you to know that you are not carrying this burden alone. Not anymore. Something inside her softened. Not fully, not dramatically, but enough. Alexander, she said quietly, I was never looking for anyone to save me. I just wanted a chance to be a mother. And you will be, he said. A very good one. Her breath caught at the sincerity in his voice. No one had ever affirmed her dream so simply, with so much certainty. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and placed something small on the table. It was a new version of her necklace charm, crafted in a gentle heart shape, almost identical to the one she always wore, but with one subtle difference. The new one had a tiny imprint of a heartbeat engraved in the center. It is not a gift, he said softly. It is a reminder. You fought for this child long before I knew your name. This symbol belongs to both of you. It is yours to keep or not. I simply wanted you to have it. Lena touched the small charm with the tip of her finger. Her eyes filled with tears that did not fall. Thank you, she whispered, for everything you have done today. Alexander stood up slowly. There is one more thing, he said. I want to be here. Not because of responsibility, not because of headlines, but because I choose to be part of this life if you allow it. Lena looked at him, her heart full and trembling. I do not know what the future will look like, she admitted, but I am willing to see where this goes. A quiet warmth passed between them. Not a dramatic declaration, not an instant love story, just two people choosing to move forward with honesty, care, and a fragile hope that felt real for the first time. As Alexander left her apartment, Lena touched the charm once more. The engraved heartbeat seemed to glow under the soft light. It was not the ending she expected. It was the beginning of something healing, something steady, something the child inside her would one day call family.